It's quite handful. I hope that I'll deliver that within the 20-minute talk time. So I'll go through those quickly, but I'll highlight the main points I want to deliver in this message in the workshop. Next slide. I'll go through an overview, the operational structure that we have in the department at this stage, the petroleum license systems briefly, and I'll talk on the gas explorations, oil and gas exploration and production. It's important that we know where we are at this stage in terms of licenses and whether we're picking up on investment or not. The planned projects we have in the country at this stage, the in-house projects within the department that's needed to boost the department as a better regulator and to bring on other projects that are planned. I think the key one for this workshop is the landowner benefits identification program. We also call that clan vetting. That landowners have been waiting for that to be 100% completed so that benefits can be released for the PNGLNC project. Key challenges that we have in the department, there's some key policy gaps that we need to bridge that to enable us to better operate as a regulator. General government policy direction at this stage. The restructure of DP, we need to move into a new authority, and I'll just conclude. Basically, we all know that petroleum projects are needed in any country in the world. Papua New Guinea is not an exception. So the state owns the petroleum resources that's stipulated in the Organic Law of 2016 and various acts in Mining and Oil and Gas Act, Section 6, specifically states that it's important for the economy. It gives the much needed GDP, the economic growth, and also for key stakeholders, provincial government and landowners, they benefit also under law out of those projects. The main legislative framework for petroleum exploration and development in the country, as we all know, is the Oil and Gas Act 1998 and the Oil and Gas Regulation. Department of Petroleum and Energy is the administrator of the current law. Various legislation also give effect or enhance the business of doing petroleum exploration and development in Papua New Guinea. And we all know Income Tax Act is a major one, Environmental Act 2000, and an important one as well as we move into gas agreement or petroleum agreement stages, is the Resource Contracts Fiscal Stabilization Act. Within the department, as it is, as a snapshot, we have an energy wing and a petroleum division. The energy wing has departed from us as of 5th of July 2021, when the National Energy Authority law came into operation by Gazettal. So we've said goodbye to them, but not entirely. We are still under one departmental structure until such time they get a formal approved structure from the government to move into the new authority. We have a petroleum division that's left to manage and regulate the petroleum industry at this stage. Mr. Gabot will talk more later on the NEA and the National Energy Policy and the roles they'll play into the future. Next slide. Now I just want to touch, it's a bit wordy, but I just want to touch on this to indicate a major message that there's a decline in PPLs and the surrenders that through the PABS chairman we've been experiencing. But firstly, there are four main licensing systems under the Oil and Gas Act. Many of you would know that already. We have firstly the petroleum prospecting licenses, and then if there is a discovery, licensees may hold on to that into a retention license, especially gas discoveries, and both a PPL or retention license may move into a PDL stage down the path. And those are the main three licenses. And then we also have the Petroleum Processing Facility license that supports development. It's situated outside of the license area. Those facilities that are within a PDL license areas don't get a license for that. It's within a PDL. And then we have a pipeline license also that joins to the development that transport crude or processed product down to an export point. Now, basically over the number of years, we have about 100 or so PPL licenses in 2014, And over a number of years, up until now, there's about half of it, 58, that's currently under tenureship. In terms of retention licenses, there's 11 active ones, and there's been 3 awarded in 2021. But even though during the COVID period, there were PPL awards of 7 licenses this year. All other development licenses and petroleum prospecting and pipeline licenses remain the same. Now, during the COVID period, many of the licensees applied for extension of time, and that's something the department has experienced. It's an indication that there is a difficulty in doing business currently in Papua New Guinea, in the petroleum industry. We've also had surrenders, and surrenders are indications that there is lack of confidence or it's difficult doing business in Papua New Guinea. Next slide. What I have up here is basically a schematic map of Papua New Guinea. The yellow indicates interests that are current in Papua New Guinea. That covers the Cape Vogel Basin, North New Guinea Basin going up, and also in the New Island areas. The blue indicates the current petroleum prospecting licenses. Most of it is within the Papuan Basin and the current offshore areas in the Gulf of Papua. The red indicates the current development licenses that we have that are operating now with major players like Oil Sets, ExxonMobil up in the Highlands region, and hopefully Total will get into the Papua by 2025. The graph on the right is a general indication of trends of petroleum prospecting activities in terms of licenses. There is a big decline around late 2018 and 2019, and that's due to COVID. But since then, we have not picked up on a scale that we think that exploration is encouraging in Papua New Guinea. So it gives you a picture of where we are in terms of license applications and the trend in approving PPLs in Papua New Guinea at this stage. Oil and gas exploration. Next slide. There's a total of 25 companies actively involved in exploration in the 85 licenses, PPLs, in Papua New Guinea at this stage. 5 companies are active in high-pressure activities in 11 PRLs. The big players, as we know, are ExxonMobil, Oil Sets, and Total. In terms of discoveries, there's more than 30 oil and gas discoveries to date, 9 oil fields, with only 5 are producing, more than 20 gas discoveries with condensate. Majority of the gas fields are marginal and stranded right across Papua New Guinea in the Papuan Basin and a bit up towards the north. Gas reserves, according to our estimates, we have more than 25 trillion cubic feet 2C reserves recoverable in Papua New Guinea at this stage. Majority of the gas fields are marginal and stranded, like I mentioned earlier. The exploration potential currently in PNG is so focused around the Papuan Basin. There needs to be more encouragement for exploration up towards the North Cape Vogel and North New Guinea and New Island Basin and Bougainville Basin as well. Now, from the graph on the right, you would note that the colors in red are the existing producing licenses in terms of oil and gas as well. Juha and Angore are yet to be connected. So once they come on stream later, they will contribute to the economy of this country. The map on the left gives a picture of the petroleum basins that we have currently in Papua New Guinea. As I said earlier, majority of the activity is just focused to the south, and activities have also picked up in the Gulf of Papua, unlike in the 1980s and the 1990s, given the discovery in oil production in the country, apart from gas that is slowly picking up in terms of PNGLNC project and other proposed projects that I will speak a little bit down. Next slide. The planned projects that we have in Papua New Guinea at this stage, we have the Papua LNG project, PRL 15 in Gulf, the Pinyang, PRL 15 in Western, Pasca being the first offshore project, and we have two other projects in Western Province. That's PDL 10, Stanley project, and also Ketu Elevala, which is a license application since 2014. For Papua LNG project, the operator is Total Energies, as we all know. They've signed a gas agreement in 2019. The gas agreement has been fully given the effect by various legislative amendments and the fiscal stability agreement that was signed in April this year. The company will soon, they are in the pre-FEED stages, and an announcement of FEED is expected from the operator, and that will move the project to the next phase of putting in a clear, concise application for a development license. We've extended the last term of the PRL 15 license this year as well, at the same time of the signing of the fiscal stability agreement in February. So that's a positive news for Total to continue to firm up marketing and their work towards a FEED process and application for a PDL. For Pinyang project, application for a PDL has been with the department for quite a while, and maybe as we all have heard on the media and heard of what's been happening, the state negotiating team have been in discussions for a possible gas agreement for about 2 years. That has stalled. Currently, there's a new SNT being formed already by NEC, and we are currently in negotiations with ExxonMobil at this stage. We hope to get to a fiscal term sheet for a gas agreement within this month of August. So the government would like to see certain major announcements around before September 16. So these are the projects that are on lineup that we're pushing Papua, we're pushing Pinyang, and we're pushing Pasca also to get to a gas agreement signing stage. For Pasca, we've completed all the negotiations. We've completed the negotiations, and the gas agreement is in its draft form. As of last night, a briefing with Prime Minister and the whole of the SNT, and we are given up until next week to sit down with Twinja and complete the gas agreement for a possible NEC announcement in the following week. So that's the status of the current 3 projects that we have at this stage. The next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier on Stanley project, PDL 10. A PDL was granted in 2014. Unfortunately, the project never got off the ground. Even a development agreement was signed with landowners, and the expected promised benefit from the project, these have not been realized to date. Aran Energy have bought the license from Repsol. At this stage, they are in a technical review with my department to look at the next concept that they might present for a field development plan to bring this project off the ground into construction and production. That's where we are at this stage. Aran has a very ambitious program to get into a final investment decision at the end of this year. But as we see it, it will take a bit of technical review and discussion with the department to get to that stage. There's a lot to be done. Even Ketuela project is also linked to the development of Stanley in terms of processing facilities, so they all tie together. So these projects are under technical review at this stage, but these are the planned projects that government is looking at. I have 5 minutes, so I'll go quickly. In-house project at this stage, I think one of the key ones that we've been struggling with the chamber and the industry is on the fees and charges. We've had debates, we've never got that off the ground last year because of the discussions, heavy discussions around the organic law as well. So it's a requirement under Section 71A of Finance Management Act as a non-tax revenue. Department is working towards that, and we plan to engage with Chamber within this month before we go out with the request for gazettal to finance. So that's something that Chamber and us will, after this workshop, we'll get into the discussions before we make a decision to write to finance to gazette the first part of it. Amendments in the Oil and Gas Act. You're all aware of the 2020 June amendment to the Oil and Gas Act. One of the key components in that is that it removes the arbitration clause in there and leaves most of the powers with the minister to deliberate also. So there's an amendment that's in place. It was talked about as a bit controversial, but that's something that the state has made a decision that it's in the right path. We're proposing new amendments to the Oil and Gas Act, and that is to give proper effect to clan vetting and land identification, which we see is lacking in legislation. So that was one of the reasons why we have a lot of court cases that challenge the ministerial determinations that through the lobby process were determined by minister. Now, local content plan, it's a big in-house policy that we engage with at this stage with commerce and trade industry. There's an NEC decision in place already, so we are in consultation with commerce, and I'm sure Mr. Fraser Murray will speak on that in the next session. My view is that there is already a template in the PNGLNC project by ExxonMobil. We could borrow that, use that as a way going forward, and also with the overarching local content policy, we may also look at focused impact project ones for the petroleum sector. You know, we have offshore projects like PASCA, we have onshore projects. They're different. They bring in different levels of investment, magnitude, and impact. So different aspects of the petroleum industry as well. If you look at early works to feed into the production life and decommissioning stages, local content is all part of that. And at this stage, we have written the local content for PASCA, first of its kind into the PASCA gas agreement, apart from the previous agreements that the state has signed with developers like Exxon and Exxon especially. Let's move on. Okay, this is of main interest for this workshop, the lobbied clan vetting land identification project that was undertaken since 2013. At this stage, we are 90% complete. We are 90% complete. We have only Juha and Angore ADR. Once ADR is completed, it will come to the department for the minister to do the ministerial determinations. So that's where we are at this stage. On the PNGLNC plan site, it has been completed already in 2015, where 83 clans from the 4 different villages were determined, and they are currently receiving benefits. For a PNGLNC pipeline segment, pipeline segment 1 to 8, ministerial determinations were gazetted, and a total of 300 clans were determined as beneficiaries. First batch of payment of royalty and equity benefits for segments number 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8 were done in 2020. The other remaining segments will be paid this year in 2020, and I'm sure when John Twime from MRDC addresses the workshop, he will also talk on that. And that's the next plan that will happen this weekend going forward. So let's go on. In PDL 7 and 1, ministerial determinations are completed. For PDL 7, we've moved into already having a GR company information where landowner reps have been elected into. The next stage that we are at is for the release of the royalty and equity benefits. So that's the first of its kind in the PNGLNC project. Since 2013, since the beginning of lobby process up until now. Jua PDL9 is yet to be completed with Angore. The existing brownfields remain as they are. It's the gas benefits that trickles down into the existing arrangements. Key challenges that we have. Next slide. Of course, we'll never get away from land owner issues. So that's something we are managing on a daily basis. There are outstanding commitments, there are MOA submissions, all that are coming to the department in loads. Outstanding MOA commitments are being addressed through Department of National Planning and Treasury. So the department is working on that. We have legacy issues that are compounding on the department of bills from previous Kokopo UBSA and the LBSAs that are still being addressed at this stage. One of the key challenges we are faced with is the funding constraints and capacity, like the industry know well and chamber as well. And I think a key one also in the technical arena is the lack of data to encourage more explorations and development. And we've encouraged multi-client surveys like such a seismic. They've been doing that in the last 2 years or so. So that's very encouraging. It has given us data, and also that has sparked of potential in the frontier areas like Bougainville Basin. Next slide. Now, policy work in process. Since 2020, when I moved into office, we started pushing this downstream policy, gas flaring policy, field abandonment policy, local content, which we are now working in consultation with Commerce closely. Domestic market obligation policy, this is a key one. The challenge with the DMO policy is that every off-taker wants to take it for profit. There's a Kumul policy, there may be an MRTC policy, there may be another policy that's coming out of different state institutions, and we've never settled on one that's acceptable. But the key thing about DMO policy is that it should, as much as possible, drive DMO down to the path of having a cheapest energy towards the end user, so that the price of production, price of goods and services, goods that get to the shops shelf can be cheap enough for Papua New Guineans to purchase. Offshore operational policy, we're working on that as well within the department. Now, general government policy, the next slide. General government policy direction. As Chamber is familiar about that, you've gone to media to express your concerns. Industry is also familiar with this one. It's a debatable issue that's ongoing, but at this stage, there's a general government direction towards a production sharing arrangement. And it's enhanced through the draft organic law that's been finalized. We don't think it will come in this term of government. It may be after the elections. But that's something that's a general trend that government is looking at going forward. The main issue is that the country thinks that it can't economically survive under the current status quo. It needs to improve its legislation to enhance development funds and revenue. And I think that's the main basic drive. Under the organic law also, it gives that opportunity for the department to become a national petroleum authority down the path. So that's where we're heading towards as a department, into a new authority. There'll be a section under the organic law that gives rise to a national petroleum authority. Can we move to the next slide? And that basically heads towards that. It enhances the department to have the capacity, being an authority, have financial autonomy as well, to generate your own revenue to sustain your activities, and to address the demands that have compounded over a number of years within the petroleum industry that in the current form we're not able to manage and address properly. Okay, let's move on. In conclusion, Department will work closely with the key stakeholders, landowners, provincial government to complete the lobby process and to ensure that the benefits that are in the trust accounts in central bank in terms of royalty and equity are released through the formalized processes. DPA will continue to work where required to improve policy gaps, as I mentioned in my presentation. And the department recognizes that to address the shortcomings and challenges it faces, the need to immediately transfer into a National Petroleum Authority with NNC to have the capacity and also to better regulate and manage the affairs of the petroleum industry going into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. M. Tasol.